Valentine's Day on a college campus is kinda like any other day for me, except you can't escape all the lovey-dovey stuff everywhere. This year, I figured I'd give Tinder a shot just for kicks. That's when I swiped right on Emily. Her profile said she was at the same college, and we shared a bunch of interests. Honestly, her smile in the profile picture got me. We matched, and she was down to meet up the same day. A part of me was psyched, thinking that maybe this Valentine's wouldn't be so lame after all. We agreed to meet at this cozy cafe near campus. It's a popular spot, known for its relaxed vibe and great coffee. Emily was already there, sitting by the window with a warm smile that made me feel welcome right away. We hit it off from the start, chatting about our courses, favorite music and TV shows we both loved. But then, things took a weird turn. She mentioned this indie band that I'd just discovered, a band that I hadn't told anyone about yet. And then she brought up a favorite quote from a book I loved, something that I'd never shared online. It was unsettling how she seemed to know so much about me, without me ever mentioning these things. After our coffee, Emily suggested that we take a walk. It was a nice evening and I figured why not. But as we walked, her conversation started to get more personal. She talked about seeing me around campus, even mentioning specific times and places where I had been. It was kind of flattering at first, but then it got creepy fast. She knew about my morning runs and even the secluded trail that I used, and also about a recent night out with my friends, stuff that I hadn't shared with her or posted anywhere. How did she know all of this? The more she talked, the more I felt like something was off. She seemed too familiar with my routine, my hangouts, and even my friends. It was like she'd been watching me. I tried to change the subject, but she'd always steer the conversation back to details about my life. When I asked her outright how she knew so much about me, she just smiled and said, "I'm really good at noticing things." That's when I started to really worry. I made up an excuse about needing to get back early for a study group. She looked disappointed but said she understood. She hugged me a goodbye a little too tightly and whispered, "I'm really glad we met. I feel like we're connected in a way you don't understand yet." Her words sent a chill down my spine. I hurried back to my room, feeling uneasy about the whole encounter. As I lay in bed that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe I'd made a huge mistake meeting up with Emily. Her interest in me didn't feel normal, it felt obsessive. I decided to limit my interactions with her until I could figure out what was really going on. But little did I know, things were about to get a lot worse. The next few days were tense. I started noticing odd things, texts from unknown numbers, some even mentioning places that I'd been to recently. Each message felt like someone was watching me, and deep down, I knew it had to be Emily. I tried to ignore them, but they kept coming, more frequent and more unsettling. Then one evening as I was heading back from the library, I saw her. Emily was there, standing across the street, just watching me. When our eyes met, she smiled and waved, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. I confronted her the next day. I needed to know why she was doing this, so we met in the same cafe where our first date had been. The moment I asked her about the text and the following, her demeanor changed. She insisted that she was just trying to get to know me better, that all her actions were out of affection. But when I told her that I felt uncomfortable and wanted her to stop, she got upset. She just couldn't understand why I wasn't flattered by her attention. "I've put in so much effort into us," she said, her voice tinged with a mix of anger and desperation. "You can't just walk away from something so special." I left the cafe feeling shaken. It was clear that Emily didn't see the situation the same way I did. Her version of affection was my nightmare of obsession. I decided to cut all contact with her, hoping that she'd eventually get the message and move on. But as I walked back to my dorm, I had this sinking feeling that things were far from over. That night, the texts became more direct. "Why are you avoiding me?" one read. "We're meant to be together," said another. It was as if our conversation this day had only fueled her determination. I lay in bed, wondering how a simple Tinder match had spiraled into this frightening situation. I felt trapped, unsure of how to escape Emily's relentless pursuit. After that night, I took action. I talked to campus security explaining the whole situation. They were concerned, especially after I showed them the messages. They promised to talk to Emily and make it clear that her behavior was crossing a line. For a few days it seemed to work. The text stopped, and I didn't see Emily around. I started to relax, thinking maybe, just maybe, it was over. But the relief was short-lived, because after about a week later, I found a letter tucked under my dorm room door. It was from Emily, and as I read it, my heart sank. In her letter, Emily wrote about how our connection was too strong to be ignored, and how she knew that I'd eventually realize that we were meant to be together. She said she'd wait for me, no matter how long it took. The letter was a mix of apology and insistence that our story wasn't over. I realized then that Emily's obsession wasn't something that I could just walk away from. It wasn't about affection, it was about control. She couldn't accept that I didn't want what she did, and her letter made it clear that she wasn't ready to give up. I took the letter to campus security again, and they started a more formal process, involving both the college's administration and the possibility of legal action. It was a step that I hadn't wanted to take, but Emily's refusal to respect my boundaries left me no choice. The situation had escalated from a bad Tinder date to a serious issue of personal safety and mental well-being. In the weeks that followed, things quieted down. Emily was no longer a constant, ominous presence in my life, but the experience left its mark on me. I became more cautious, more aware of the information I shared online, and who I trusted. Emily's letter remains a chilling reminder of how quickly things can spiral out of control, and how easily the line between affection and obsession can be blurred. This happened a year ago in Miami. Valentine's Day in the city has a way of magnifying loneliness, so when I matched with a man named Michael on a dating app, it felt like a bit of a chance encounter. He was charming, with a sense of humor that came through even in text, and he suggested that we meet up for dinner at a cozy Italian place downtown. It was a traditional choice, but I appreciated the gesture. In a sea of half-hearted invitations to go grab a drink, Michael's invitation actually stood out as genuinely thoughtful. The restaurant was the kind of restaurant that you read about in novels, with dim lighting and candles on each table casting warm glows on the faces of diners. Michael was already there, seated at the table with a view of the bustling street outside. His smile was even more engaging in person, and the initial awkwardness that usually accompanies online dates melted away easily. We ordered wine, and the conversation flowed as easily as the vintage he recommended. He was attentive, asking about my interests and listening intently to my stories about traveling and my aspirations to write. But as the night went on, things started feeling off. Michael kept insisting on ordering more wine, even when I said I was good with what I had. It kind of put me on edge, how he wouldn't take no for an answer. Then he started asking all these personal questions about my dating life, stuff I wasn't really comfortable diving into on a first date. But he had a way of circling back. The real red flag, however, came when he poured me another glass of wine. He did this thing where he covered the top of the bottle with his hand. It was weird, but I didn't think much of it until I took a sip, and then later started feeling dizzy. Like, really dizzy. My head was spinning, and I just couldn't focus. I knew something was wrong, so I made an excuse and headed to the restroom to clear my mind. Locked in the bathroom stall, it hit me. I'm a nurse, and I've seen this kind of thing before. The dizziness, the foggy head, was all adding up to something really bad. I was panicking, trying to figure out what to do next, trapped in a nightmare situation on what was supposed to be a simple Valentine's date. In that bathroom, trying to keep my head straight, I realized that I had to get out of there. The thought of confronting Michael scared me, but staying felt even scarier. I texted my trusted friend quickly, telling her where I was and what was happening. I didn't know if Michael had planned to take things further, but I wasn't about to stick around and find out. When I came out, I told Michael I wasn't feeling well and needed to leave. He looked annoyed and then concerned, and offered to drive me home. No way I was going anywhere with him, so I insisted on taking a cab, but he kept pushing, trying to persuade me to stay or let him help. It was like he flipped a switch from charming to being creepy in seconds. Somehow, I managed to get out of the restaurant and into a cab without him following me. The whole ride home, my mind was racing. What if he had drugged me? What if I hadn't realized in time? It was terrifying, and as soon as I got home, I blocked him on everything. The dating app, Hinge, my phone, social media. I didn't want anything to do with him ever again. The next day was rough. I felt sick, embarrassed, and scared all at once. I reported Michael on Hinge, but it felt like such a small thing to do after what had happened. Talking to my friend helped. She stayed with me and made sure I wasn't alone. It took me a while to get over that night. I kept thinking about how things would have gotten way worse if I hadn't listened to my gut. After that nightmare date, I was pretty shaken up, so I took a break from dating apps, focusing on myself and spending time with friends who knew what had happened. It was like a wake-up call, really, about being careful and not ignoring the red flags, no matter how small they may seem at first. But the story doesn't end there. A few weeks later, I was at a coffee shop with a friend when I saw Michael again. He was there, just a few tables away, and he hadn't seen me yet. My heart started racing, and all those feelings from the night came flooding back. I wanted to leave immediately, but my friend convinced me to stay, saying that I shouldn't let him have that power over me. Michael eventually noticed me, and to my surprise, he looked away quickly, almost like he was the one who was afraid. He left soon after, without saying a word. It was weird, but in a way it gave me a sense of closure. Seeing him again, and not being the one to run, felt empowering. I never heard from Michael after that, and I'm more than okay with it. The experience taught me a lot about trusting my instincts, and the importance of feeling safe. It's something that I'll never forget, and I'm just grateful that I got out of the situation before anything worse happened. I shared my story in a few forums. It was shocking to see how many people had gone through similar experiences. It made me realize how important it is to talk about these things, and to warn others and to remind them that it's okay to leave if something feels off. It all started a week before Valentine's Day. I'm Dave, and at the time I was just getting over a breakup with my ex, Sarah. We'd been on and off for a while, but things had ended for good, or so I thought. Our relationship was intense, to put it mildly. Sarah had always been kind of clingy, and well, let's just say, she had some unique kinks that I just couldn't really get into. I thought we were done, that I could finally move on. But then I started getting these text messages. The first one came out of nowhere. "Thinking of you," it read, with a heart emoji. Classic Sarah, but I ignored it, thinking that she was just having a moment. Then came another. "Remember our last Valentine's? Let's make this one unforgettable." That's when alarm bells started ringing. We had broken up months ago, and I hadn't given her any reason to think we were getting back together. I tried to be clear, responding that it was over and she needed to move on, but the messages kept coming, each one more persistent than the last. Things took a turn for the worse pretty quickly after the first few messages. Sarah started showing up in places she knew where I'd be. First time was at the gym. I was finishing up a workout when I saw her there. She was watching me just from across the room. It freaked me out, but maybe I thought it was a coincidence. Then it happened again at the coffee shop I hung out at, and this time she came up to me, acting like nothing was wrong, like we were still together. She talked about our plans for Valentine's Day, and no matter how much I told her we were done, she just wouldn't listen. But it didn't stop with public encounters. She began leaving things at my door. Gifts, notes, and even some personal items that were a clear reminder of her, let's just say, unique interests. It was clear she was trying to send me a message, one that I wanted nothing to do with. I started feeling like I was being watched all the time. My friends told me that they'd seen her asking about me, and I even caught her car parked outside my place late at night a few times. I confronted her about it and told her she had to stop, that it was over for good, but she just laughed it off, said that I was being dramatic. "We're meant to be together," she insisted. "You'll see. I'll make you realize it." It was like I was talking to a wall. No matter what I said, she had this delusional belief that we were still destined to be together, and nothing I did or said could convince her otherwise. Just when I thought things couldn't get any weirder, Valentine's Day had arrived. I had made plans to go out with some friends, trying to keep it low-key and avoid any places where Sarah might show up. But when I got home to change, I found something that made my blood run cold. My apartment door was unlocked, and inside, it was like stepping into the set of a thriller movie. The whole place was filled with what I could only describe as a shrine to our past relationship. Pictures of us together, candles, and more of those personal items Sarah seemed so fond of leaving for me. But the centerpiece was a doll-like mannequin dressed up in some of Sarah's clothes, sitting at my dining table with the note pinned to it. "Dinner's on me tonight. Happy Valentine's. Love, Sarah." It was beyond creepy, and it was terrifying. I realized then that she had a key, probably made a copy of it back when we were together. The thought of her being in my apartment, setting this whole scene up, it was like a violation that I just couldn't shake off. So I called the police, but without any real threats to my safety, they said that there wasn't much they could do besides file a report. That night, with my friends around me, I just couldn't relax. Every noise made me jump, and I kept checking my phone, half expecting Sarah to somehow know that I found her surprise. The fun evening I had planned turned into a night of paranoia, constantly looking over my shoulder, expecting her to appear at any moment. That was the last straw for me, as the next day I changed the locks, got a security camera, and started taking different routes to the work or the gym. I hated that I had to do this and alter my life because of her, but I didn't know what else to do. Sarah's obsession wasn't just clingy or kinky, it was dangerous, and I was determined to do whatever it took to put an end to it. So in the weeks that followed the nightmarish Valentine's Day, things started to quiet down. I hadn't actually heard from her, and the constant feeling of being watched slowly began to fade. Maybe she had finally gotten the message, or perhaps the police visit scared her off. Either way, I was just relieved to get back to some semblance of normalcy. I even started dating someone new, a nice change of pace from the chaos Sarah had brought into my life. But just when I thought it was all behind me, I received a letter. It wasn't like the note Sarah used to leave. This was actually more thoughtful, almost like an apology. In it, Sarah wrote about realizing her mistakes, how she understood now that her actions were wrong and that she was getting help. It sounded sincere, and for a moment I caught myself hoping that she had changed. The twist, however, came a few days later. I found out through a mutual friend that Sarah had been bragging about sending the letter, how it was all a part of a plan to win me back. She believed that this grand gesture would prove her love and dedication, completely missing the point about why her behavior was so frightening in the first place. It's a reminder that obsession can blind people to reality, making them believe that any action, no matter how extreme, is justified in the name of love. The realization hit me hard. No letter or apology could erase the fear and discomfort she had caused. It was a lesson in boundaries, in understanding that love should never feel like a siege. I decided then to fully cut ties with Sarah, legally if necessary. It was the only way I felt I could truly move on and protect myself from any future gestures of her love. As for me, I'm doing okay now. I've learned a lot about trust, and about listening to my gut, and the importance of setting clear boundaries in relationships. Sarah's obsession was a dark chapter in my life, but it's one that I'm ready to close now for good.